Hello, I'm Brian Johnson from Revolution Taxidermy Supply and Masterpiece Archery Targets. What we're talking about today is our third shooting system. We have 5 shooting systems built into our deer. The one we're talking about today is the geometric shot placement system. But what I want to do first is I want to give an overview just very quickly of the 2 systems we've already talked about. This is the first one here, which is the single circle system. And what we talked about the single circle system is, it is only accurate for perfect shot placement if you're on the ground and you're shooting at the deer perfectly broadside. If you are in a tree and you shoot at this circle and the deer is close and you have a steep angle, you can cripple the deer by hitting just one lung. If the deer is quartering away from you, like this deer is looking back, and you make a perfect shot in the circle, in reality, in real life, you can cripple the deer again by just hitting one lung. And it is my belief that the single circle system, which is what is being taught in America today, actually teaches people to cripple deer. So my system is actually designed not to do it this way. So we'll go to the next one here, and we'll show you the next advancement. This here is the same deer, except the side panel. We offer 3 or 4 different side panels. This one here has 3 circles. It's our tri-panel. It has the same typical 90-degree broadside panel. It has your quartering away 45-degree panel. And it has, for a tree stand shot, this is a 60-degree angled back and 28-degree angled down. So the advantage of this is, instead of teaching just one perfect shot like the single circle does, this teaches 3. The other advantage is you have 3 different bullseyes that you can shoot up before you have to replace it. So in other words, this saves you money. This is better than the single circle, but it still doesn't help you when you're shooting at the other places, but it gets you closer. Now, we're gonna go over here, and what we're talking about today, this is gonna look probably kind of crazy to you, but this is called the geometric shot placement system. And what this is doing is this is basing science of perfect anatomy based upon center kill technology, based upon mathematics. And if that doesn't sound like the craziest thing you ever did see for hunting, I don't know how in the world I invented all this. But here's how this works. We have a chart right here. In this chart, what I want you to see here is there's a hunter up in a tree stand. And he's in a tree stand that's 10 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet, 25 feet, all the way to 40 feet. So it has, what is this, has 7 different hunters at 5-foot increments in a tree. And each one of those deer, each one of those hunters is shooting at a deer that is 5 yards, 10 yards, 15 yards, all the way out to 60 yards, okay? So you take all these hunters shooting at all these different deer, and it shows all the geometric shot angles that they would have to make to be able to hit that deer perfect, okay? Because this is the reality of the real world. Now that same deer, if he's turned quartering away or half quartering away, that changes the dynamics there. So now I'm going to explain how this works with these numbers, or with these tacks that are in here. Okay? Now, if you see all these different colors here, they all come up to catch the flag, they come up to the middle here. And we've already talked earlier that directly below the backbone, right below this here, that is the perfect shot dealing with center kill technology that we want the arrow to go through the animal with. So, if you take a look at this first row here, the bottom row, which are all yellow, those are all 90-degree on the ground, and those are all made for different degrees as far as if the deer is broadside, and then every increment that he turns back. Every one of those is noted at what the angle that it is, and it goes from 90 degrees, and this last one I believe is all the way down to 30 degrees, okay? Now, what if you're up in a tree and the deer is angled like this, or like this, or like this? Well, these are all marked to be able to end up giving you a trajectory to be able to show you where you need to hit at a particular angle. Okay, now, I'll go back to the chart. I'll show you a little bit more how this works. If you understand the trajectory angles of the hunters in the tree at different heights, shooting at deer at different distances, that makes your entry shot in a different, it needs to be at a different place to be able to hit the dot in the middle, the center kill. Now if you go up here in this chart here in the top, if I don't wiggle this, There's a chart here that says 10 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet, 25, 30, all the way to 40 feet. On that chart, it gives the distance out that the hunter would be shooting at. So if you're 10, well, let's take the tree stand we're shooting at. Let's go to 15 feet right here. So if you're at 15 feet and the deer here is out at 10 yards, that means that's 31 degrees and you'd shoot at 7.75. So that's coming from the top down. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We come back at 7 3/4 right there from a 90-degree shot from the tree stand where Jacob was shooting at it yesterday. That's the exact spot. I mean, we're literally within a 1/4 of an inch on this system showing you exactly where you should shoot the deer. Now, let's say if you turn the deer at, say, a 45-degree angle. These bottom angles are all marked. So then you would take it an angle like this at 10 yards. You would move over and you'd actually shoot the deer there. So in other words, every angle that you can have that you could shoot this deer at, from the deer being from 5 yards to 60 yards, and from the hunter being in the tree from 10 feet to 40 feet, every one of those angles is figured out exactly for you so you know where to shoot the deer. Now here's how this works in real time. You put your deer target out, you set it at different angles. You take a look at where you think you should shoot it, because we don't want any of these on here when we shoot it. We don't want to know where we're supposed to shoot. So what we want to do is we want to actually shoot the deer, come down, take a look at our chart, and then we measure and say, oh, I should have been 2 inches higher in 1 inch to the left. So then you keep moving it. And the whole purpose of this whole system, and we have 2 more systems to show you, is for you to practice doing this so it becomes second nature. It becomes like muscle memory, so you can take a deer and have somebody turn it, shoot it, boom. They turn it this way, boom. And so I'm actually going to set up a contest where a person has 5 arrows. They have a limited amount of time to shoot, and the deer is going to be at different angles and different distances moving, and they have to be able to shoot them. And each number of the arrow is going to be marked with a number, so we knew which shot it was at that particular time, so that they can judge that on a, because we're wanting to make this real world. The deer doesn't come in and stand broadside and pose at 10 yards or 20 yards and says, now shoot me before I move. They're coming in, they're moving, they're quartering towards you, they're quartering away. So I'm trying to teach real world archery shooting to make the most perfect pinpoint shot possible, so you have the largest target area possible, which the end result is you don't cripple the deer, you kill the deer. Now, I'm sure if you're probably confused by watching this, and you probably wonder, how in the world did we figure out all these angles? How do we know you're supposed to shoot the deer here if you're up 15 feet at 10 yards at that quartering away angle that's going to go through center kill? How do you know that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you exactly how we figured that out. Okay, we'll go to our next deer over here. Now, this deer here is poured out of taxidermy foam. And if you notice in my introductions, I'm with Revolution Taxidermy Supply and Masterpiece Archery Targets. My background is actually in taxidermy, sculpturing animals for the taxidermy industry. So I study the anatomy from the inside out. So when I'm doing something that I want that's solid, in other words, the archery target foam is flexible, I pour the product out of taxidermy foam. That's what this is. So what we did is we took the same target you're seeing here except out of taxidermy foam. I just took a jigsaw and I cut slots right along where those numbers would be. Okay? I then put an arrow through each one of these, and I put it through the center kill technology, which you'll see is the most perfect spot to shoot a deer. All these arrows are hitting the deer on the backside in the same place. Now, if you take a look at these arrows, they're all shooting every which way but loose. But do you know every one of these arrows hits the exact same spot in the middle of the deer, center kill technology? They're perfect. And so we just run this arrow here from, let's say it's this degree angle back. We hold it up to number 8. We put the angle gauge on it. We see what the angle is. We move it up to number 7, to number 6, to number 5. We did the same thing with every one of these arrows. I believe there's 60 different aiming marks that are built into the side of the target. And every one of them go through the center of the largest kill zone possible, which is right behind the heart, which we saw in our center kill technology. So by actually getting this perfect here, putting it on our charts and on the deer, you going out and putting the deer there and actually shooting it, and then taking a look at your chart where you should have shot, it's starting to teach you where the perfect shot is. Now, these 5 yellow tacks represent 5 different angles for shooting a deer on the ground horizontally. The first one is at 90 degrees, the second one's at 70, the third one is at 55, the fourth one's at 40, and the third one's at 30. And that's all dealing with of turning the deer so that your arrow, as you go back, your arrow is going to start angling back farther of where you need to hit the deer to be able to go through the center kill. Okay? Now, for you to know how to set the deer up out in your yard to practice this system, what you do, say you want to practice this shot, is you just line up the top flag with the bottom X and you aim that right at where you're going to be shooting from. So right now, if I line up this top of this where the red flag is, and you can just use an arrow, I point this up at the tree stand, that's going to bring me down right here to this X here, and that's going to show me where I should shoot. Okay? Now this is going to show you how we figured out all those angles to get them perfectly. What we did is we took an angle pitch meter, we cut a slot in all the, right along all the lines where the aiming marks, or we call them aiming marks, are on the deer. We inserted an arrow through the hole here into the hole, which is our center kill technology or our center axis, and then we pivoted these arrows up and down, and then we put the angle meter on the arrow, actually like this. And then as we went in 1-inch increments, as the arrow moved, it told us the exact angle that this arrow needs to be to hit the deer, and it's guaranteed it's going to go through the center axis because the other end of this arrow is in the center axis coming out on the other side. Then I have an exact angle of every single dot that is on this target to show you precisely with pinpoint accuracy where you would shoot this deer, so it would go through the center axis and it would guarantee you would shoot him in the largest target possible and kill the deer. Because remember, our goal is to have a deer that travels no farther than 150 yards and dies within 10 seconds. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to have Jacob actually shoot the deer. I position the deer in a way so he doesn't know exactly where he's supposed to shoot. This is going to be kind of like a real-time situation. Actually, it's cheating a little bit because the marks are there. But Jacob is just learning this system. So what he's going to do is he's going to take one shot on the ground here. I'm not telling him where to shoot. There's no circles. There are little dots, aiming marks, but he doesn't know which one to shoot at. So he's going to take a shot here on the ground. He's going to then climb up in the tree, take a shot on the tree, and then we're going to go and actually examine his shot for him to be able to see where he should have hit. Because here's the point. He may hit exactly where he wants to hit. He may hit that exact spot, but the spot he's aiming at may be the wrong spot. And that's the point why we call our shooting systems the sight in your buck shooting systems. So because you have to know where to shoot the buck, the sight in the buck, to know where to shoot at him, even if your weapon is sighted imperfectly. What we want to do, Jacob, we're going to take a look at how good a shot you made. But the first thing I want to do is ask you, let's take a look at your ground shot here. I want to know, where were you aiming at first? In other words, how good a shot did you make for how good a shot you thought you made? What were you trying to hit there? Do you remember?
Well, my first shot, obviously, I hit back a little bit too far than I wanted, and I needed to bring it down lower.
So where do you think your perfect shot was?
I believe if I would have brought it right around within this general.
Right here. So you believe you shot high and back. So that would have been your perfect shot right there.
Yep.
Okay? Now what about this one here?
This one, too far forward. Needed.
Too far forward. Where do you think your perfect shot of that would be?
Should have been about here.
That perfect shot would be about almost where this arrow was there, okay? So this one here, you're about 3 inches off. You're both about 3 inches off on both of them, okay?
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
Now, what I want you to see, who's watching this video, is to sight in your buck these shooting systems. The whole purpose of this is for you to shoot the target, make the perfect shot you make, and then analyze to see how perfect it really is. So what we're going to do, Jacob, is we're going to go around the back side now, and I'm going to show you on how to use the shooting system where your shot should have been, and then you're going to be able to go, huh, that may not make sense to you. And there's a lot of learning that people in America have to redo from hunting to see exactly where to shoot, exactly where that spot should be, because it's the deer when they come through the woods. I don't know if you've shot a lot of deer, those of you watching. I don't know how many times I've shot a deer and I come and I see where they run through the woods, I see where I hit them, and what I remember and what actually took place seem to be two different things. The angle that a deer is at when you're shooting it is subjective to your judgment when you're doing it. In Jacob's judgment here is he's shooting this deer, but from just what he told me, he's shooting the deer more broadside than it actually is. But we're going to go in the back here and I'm going to explain to him so he understands where he should have shot, because I'm a Christian and the Bible says get understanding. So it's not a matter of me telling him this is where you should have shot it. It's a matter of him and you understanding where you should have shot it, and then more importantly, why. Now, here's what we do. Do you see this red flag here? If I would have told you this ahead of time, you would have been able to cheat. But deer don't come through the woods with a red flag sticking out there. Right? Here's what I do. This goes, if you were to drop a plumb bob line or shoot a deer right through there, that's going to take you through that little circle in there, the center axis point. So that's where you want your arrows when you shoot them to end up going through, okay? Now if you take a look at that arrow there, that looks pretty good like that's going to go through there. But your arrow of your angling away from where you shot at over there, all we do is we put this arrow on the flag here like this, and we point this right exactly where you're shooting from, okay? So do you see, if you come in the front here, if you run this down, that'll show you, you literally needed to hit where that yellow mark was right there. Because what I did is I cheated. I turned the target, and I lined this arrow up with the yellow mark, and I turned the target so that's aiming right towards you. Okay, do you see that? So, and then as far as your height goes, that shows you your distance back. As far as your height goes, the bottom line of X's there, that's the one that you want to shoot at for a ground shot. So your shot where you thought you should shoot, which was about right here, in other words, you thought you should shoot forward and down, you really needed to go back and down to hit right there to have that arrow go through that center axis. Okay? Now your tree stand shot would be on the same plane following these blue lines coming up, because you shot at the same distance in the tree stand, or the same plane, the same distance back as you did on the ground. So all we would do is take our arrow there, and then we would just point that up until that comes in the tree stand. You see that? So then if you were to shoot at the right dot here, that's the catch. Which one should you shoot at? But the blue line's the ones you needed to shoot at, but you didn't know it. You shoot at the right one, and that will bring you from your top trajectory, angling down through the center kill technology. And by the chart which I had earlier that I showed you, that tells us from him being up 15 feet in a tree, the deer being 10 yards out, he's at 7, and I believe it was 7 3/4. So that'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right about here, that would be what your perfect shot would be. So then what happens is when you go back and you study this thinking, okay, I'm going to take that shot over, that's where I should have shot it, and you practice this over and over and over and shoot it, then you're going to know instinctively how far back that you should shoot. Because it's surprising, whenever I have people do this and they shoot it, they're always surprised at where they shoot. And the reason I know they are is, I am always shocked, because people almost always shoot too far forward. When I shoot at a target like this, I go by what I've done for close to, 40 years of shooting, and I always shoot too far forward because I'm used to shooting at those circles. I know I have to shoot back, but I never shoot back far enough. And so what you just did here is very, very, very typical, because there's two things you need to know. One is, where is your shot compared to where you aimed at. Where's the spot you aimed at? So that's your archery skills, sighting in your bow, how good of a shot you are. Number two, what we're teaching is sighting in your buck to be able to know after you make, let's say, your perfect pinpoint shot, but is that shot in the right place? And you can see how you were off about 3 inches. Pretty close, but by you learning the system more and more, you'll be able to move those arrows, and by moving those arrows where they're supposed to be, you'll be shooting in the middle of the paper plate, which means you got a bigger target, which means if you miss by 3 inches, it isn't going to matter because you're still in the middle. But if your judgment is 3 inches off, and your shot's 3 inches off, you may end up crippling the deer. And that's why I call it the sight in your buck. You sight in your bow, it's wonderful, that's great, but you also need to sight in your buck. So what are your thoughts? Why don't you tell me, have you learned anything from this, or is this so complicated, is this confusing to you?
Well, no, it's making a lot of sense knowing the angle. I guess if I would have looked back, taken another shot at this, I should have obviously looked with his right leg moving forward.
Yes.
That obviously would transition with the lungs and the hard
Yes.
R, that I should have shot up more in rather than back, and I looked at it as a broadside shot, and that's how most people learn how to shoot,
Right.
is shooting at a broadside deer. But at the same time, it is nice to know to help locate everything where it is. I mean, it's kind of a way, like, kind of the keys to help, like, cheat on a test when you go out there in the real world and shoot the big one down.
Yeah, well, hopefully you'll learn it so
Yep.
so you won't have to cheat on it.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Jacob.
Yep.
I appreciate it.